Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Elaine.
Good to see you. All right. LaDonna, are you going to advance my slides or am I?
You can advance your own slides.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
I work at Somerset Community College now, and for those of you who may not know or who might remember, I used to work at Oakwood, a training facility for people with disabilities for many years and held many positions there. And here at the Somerset Community College, it is my privilege to work in the area of diversity. We're going to talk today about intentional inclusion, and we'll start out with the definition. I found a definition that says intentional inclusion means one deliberately and with calculated purpose uses the appropriate skills to learn what they do not know, even if they think they do. A culture of intentional inclusion is one that is open, flexible, and agreeable to other ways of dealing with organizational and life issues. We find that here at the college, this is one of our primary examples of what people are doing here on an ongoing basis. Let me see. Hold on. I'm no longer able to advance my slides. What happened, LaDonna?
You weren't sharing your slides at first. I started sharing that. If you want to start sharing, that will work. Sorry.
Does that do it? Can you see it?
I can, but I'm not sure who's sharing.
Well, let's see if I can.
There you go. There we go.
There it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that we all find is that there are some challenges to creating a culture of intentional inclusion. And those things are communication, complexity, conflict, and change. We find that we must be involved with communicating with all people at all times. And it's complex because there are so many options, so many ways to go with this business of intentional inclusion. There will be conflict because of people's preconceived ideas about what's going on. And change, most people, not most people, maybe a lot of people do not adhere to the idea of there being a need for change. What you learn when you work with diversity and inclusion is that things cannot stay the way you may have been led to believe that everything would stay the same for as long as you live, because we are always constantly being involved with so many different kinds of people that we come into contact with. And you find that you need to learn more about their culture in order to understand them and to work well with them. This is true for work situations as well as anything that you do in the community, or if you're in school, the same kind of thing. This slide shows what diversity could look like. You'll notice on these photos that there are people who look all different kinds of ways. One of the things I didn't include on this slide was one of the sections of diversity has to do with disabilities, and I do not have somebody here in a wheelchair, or somebody who experiences deafness or other categories of disability that you may be familiar with. This slide, however, does. Is this what the world looks like? I would think so, on both sides of the equation. You have all different kinds of people. You can see different colors, and you can see people dressed differently. And one of the things we have learned that we have to do is accept people for who they are and from where they come from. One of the things that keeps people from accepting people who are different from them have to do with these two concepts. One is unconscious bias, in which social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness. You may not be aware that you don't like people of color, or you don't like people from Mars, or you can't stand people who are in your way with a wheelchair. But if it comes out, because the way it might come out is that you'll be angry if you encounter these kind of people, or you may have the chance to decide you don't like the way they talk. You don't like the fact that they can't talk the language that you have spoken all your life, or other kinds of stereotypes that may have been ingrained in you as you were growing up. Microaggressions is another way that we keep from accepting others. People making a statement that's indirect or subtle or unintentional, maybe, against members of a marginalized group as a racial or ethnic minority. We can see from what's happening in the world that there are people in our world who choose not to acknowledge or be kind to people who are different from them. You might look at me and say, well, I don't like that person. I don't like her because look at her. She doesn't look like me. She doesn't have the same color. Or you might look at me and say, it is impossible for somebody of color to be able to gain degrees, to be educated. I actually heard that statement yesterday in a meeting I was with. Somebody actually told somebody that it's impossible for you, when you're Black, to have an advanced degree. It just doesn't happen. That's something small. The other kinds of small things would be like, I don't care for that person. They don't talk like me. And, they really don't belong in the same group with me because, after all, they didn't grow up like I grew up and they're different. Or you could say, you are really a credit to your race. Look at what you've done. That kind of thing is so uncalled for. But on the other hand, a lot of people think like that, and what they think, it comes out of their mouths sometimes. I've heard this over the years. Many people did not like people from Japan because of a war we had with them, or people might not like people from Ukraine because of what's going on over there. There are all these different ways that people can decide that they don't have to accept others because they're just not exactly like them. Or if we run into somebody who is really wealthy and they decide that they don't like people who are not as wealthy as them, we know that happens. People look down on people who are different from them. And it could be unconscious or it could be intentional. But on the other hand, the idea is no matter who a person is or where they're from, we need to be in the business of accepting others, no matter what. Here at the community college, we do a lot of things to assure that we are aware of intentional inclusion. We have an active executive and leadership council that lead the way toward inclusion. We have a diversity plan, as do all of the other public colleges and universities in the Commonwealth. We have a diversity plan that must be approved annually by the Council on Post-Secondary Education. So they make you aware of what you need to do. You can decide how you want to work your plan, but they have to approve it to make sure that you're taking the path that they prefer people to take. We have an active diversity, equity, and inclusion team and a diversity council. The inclusion team helps us decide what we're going to do as far as engaging people and including people here on the campus. And we also have a council of people that consist of people with various nationalities and different countries that they're from, that come up with ways that we can use to recruit students of all races and ethnicities, and how we might best go about that. We have an active multicultural club that is mostly students that are involved, and they like to assure diversity in as many ways as possible. For instance, whoever the leadership of that club is any given year, they will determine what they would like for us to do as far as inclusion or learning about different kinds of people and cultures. One year we had the group decide that they wanted us to learn about different people with disabilities. So we talked about people with cerebral palsy in different ways that is manifested. We talked about people with deafness and how that works. We invited somebody, a couple, married couple, to come and present to us. The husband was deaf and the wife was the person who was a hearing person, and they both showed everybody how to do sign language and how that works in their family. We had a transgender female who spoke with us about the kind of culture she is involved with. We've had all different kinds of people based on us just wanting to know how we can get to know other people, whether they're from here, from our own area, or not. We have an active student government association that practices inclusion, and we follow the lead of the KCTCS system office in encouraging LGBTQIA+ connections. In fact, we have with us on the call today one of my friends, Mary Taylor Huntsman, who is a librarian here at the college. She's been here for many years, and one of her interests has been working with the LGBTQIA+ population here on campus. She is on the PFLAG board here in the county, and she assists with the Chill Out and Proud celebrations. And this past October, we had that celebration here on campus. And I will let her talk about those things right now, and the GSA student club that we used to have as an activity here, Gay Straight Alliance. Mary Taylor, you ready?
I gotcha.
Thank you.
Well, by way of a little more framing, my first job right out of graduate school was at Kentucky State, and to Elaine's point about that comment about advanced degrees, I was terrified of Dr. Smith. She was a very determined woman and had achieved a great deal, and she was my first college president. So, you know, I was at KSU for almost a year and ended up leaving to go to a much different school, CU, which is a little more diverse than you might think it is. We had students from all over the world there, and we got a huge influx of Brazilian students while I was there, and I was the only Spanish speaker who could read Latin. So I was the one who had to kind of bridge that gap. So I sat with 3 Portuguese English dictionaries on my desk all the time and ended up being sort of the bridge for everybody there.
Mary Taylor, tell everybody what CU is. They may not know.
Campbellsville University. I was there 5 years and I've been here for 23. So, and I'm originally from the area. I'm from the metropolis of Greensburg, which is dead smack in the center of the state. And not the most diverse place on earth, but certainly more inclusive than like when I got to UK. That was a shock. But we ended up starting our GSA because there were students around on campus and they felt marginalized. So our former calculus professor and our former chemistry professor, who are both gay men, and I, as the ally person, got together and set about organizing the students. And as Elaine mentioned about our multicultural club, the approach is to allow the students to set the agendas. And if they want to be political, they can be political. We'll support them. If they don't want to, then they don't have to. It's what they want to do with their year or years in the organization. And I was really proud of them because they won the club award one year when they worked with the multicultural club and also the anime club to help shuttle the kids around who were on campus from high schools and middle schools for our international festival in October. And, you know, you had kids with electronic cat ears leading children around campus, and they thought that was the coolest thing ever because every 5 minutes an ear would twitch. But that was pretty intersectional for here. We started out with a pretty good group, which included Elaine's son, John, as an ally. And we had a good group for several years, but then it kind of died down a little bit. And we keep trying to re-engage, but this is up to the students. One of the problems that we have here is the continuum of outness, because our students aren't always fully out and some of them are not out at all. So we have to figure out where they can meet and feel safe. We want them to feel included. We want them to feel that the college is for them. KCTCS has recently created and is starting to roll out its chosen name policy, which is huge. We used to make the IDs here in the library, and I was forced by the lack of that policy to put dead names on IDs, which is a name that the person no longer uses. And in some cases, they had to use those to go into their clinicals as health sciences students. That's not really inclusive. If you don't call people by their names, they don't feel like they belong. It's pretty basic. So we're in the middle of getting everybody's heads around that. Our PFLAG chapter is not an old one. It's been around for about 5 years. We had our first Pride here in 2019. It was downtown. We had imported protesters bust in from other states. I got screamed at by a literal Nazi, and I'm ethnically Jewish on my dad's side. So that was a bucket list item, I guess. And so we looked for somewhere else. And I said, well, why not Festival Field? Because it has a setback from the road. It's out in the woods. It's grassy. It's cool. It's where we have master musicians every year. And COVID slowed us down. We weren't able to have it for the next 2 years. And then we had it virtually. And then we started planning and we rolled it out this fall on Festival Field. We have it booked again for next year. It is a family-friendly festival. We had children doing pumpkin painting. We had churches providing face painting. We had political candidates and vendors, live music, and a few drag queens who were told by contract, keep it PG. It has to be family-friendly. And we'll be doing the festival again on the Saturday preceding Halloween. It was nice and cool. The weather couldn't have been prettier this year. We did have a couple of folks from our protest group from 2019 roll by slowly several times and stare at us, but you can't see anything. I was up at the admissions table. That was kind of funny. But it was well attended. We had about 700 people, and a lot of them were from out of the area. We had one family travel from Memphis who was originally from the area. Pikeville has an active pride. Ashland has a little pride that's getting going. So it's not just us heading east doing this. There has been an increase in inclusion and, positive feelings, but now we're dealing with all of the screaming about groomers and whatnot. The GSA started as a Gay Straight Alliance. That's how the tax paperwork is written, but some students from the high schools who are involved with our PFLAG chapter said it can also mean a gender and sexuality alliance. So that is probably where we're headed, but also the kids get to tell us what they're going to call themselves. So if they don't want to use GSA, it's still on the tax paperwork. They can pick something different. We're, trucking along, and we have a lot of organizations that we can work with now. Kentucky Fairness is hammering it out on the legislation right now. Human Rights Campaign is another ally organization, advocacy organization. I visited them, and they didn't really seem to get what our situation is in Appalachia when I went to their home office in Washington, D.C. a few years ago. Hopefully that's changed. We have PFLAG. There is GLSEN for youth, GLAD, which is an advocacy organization. And of course, we work with the ACLU and locally with Apple Red or the Appalachian Regional Defense Fund. I think I'd be remiss if I don't mention that there are all these bills moving through the legislature right now, and a lot of people are worried because we have moved so much more toward inclusion overall in society, and now this is like dragging us back. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen with that.
Mary Taylor, you better let me take it back over if you don't mind. Thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted to mention while you were visible that the KCTCS president hired a vice president of the LGBTQ community not very long ago, and that person is working with all of the campuses on various issues, including inclusion. Okay. Now, what you can do to be intentionally inclusive, you can begin by enjoying the buy-in from your leadership. The leadership could lead the way in your organization to assure that whoever is involved feels included and wanted. You can see what other agencies and organizations are doing with inclusivity. You can encourage cultural competency of all employees and members. You can regularly encourage inclusiveness for hiring and interactions. We do a bit about that here at the college. With every interview team that we have, I present a statement encouraging our interview teams to be sure to strongly consider people of color for different positions that may be open. You might find also ways to participate in inclusive activities and encourage participation. Here we have, as Mary Taylor mentioned, we have an annual international festival where we bring the world to our campus and include as many different kinds of people and cultures as we can. We have many. We host people from Egypt, from Syria, from all different places in the world. We have people from Belize, Philippines, Mediterranean dance troops, African-American, Hispanic speakers, whatever you can think of. Native Americans, people with deafness, transgender discussions, as I've mentioned before. And we also invited the first female African-American to earn her PhD from the University of Kentucky as one of our speakers. So we expect respect for everybody. We encourage presenters who represent different cultures to be a part of everything we do. And I would encourage you to do the same. Encourage open discussions with people from different cultures so you can learn about them and see how they feel about the world, and let them know that you believe that they belong as well. Encourage discussions about how to be more open to diversity in your organization. Have group meetings, have people brought in to get people on the same page with the way that the organization or the company would need to be for now and in the future. You yourself can learn to listen to different kinds of music like I did. You know, I had my own set of music, things that I like, classics and all that. My middle son encouraged me to like music that I think is weird, but you get to learn about other people and other kinds of parts of the world when you do openly accept what might be a possibility for you. Join a dance lesson opportunity that would represent people of different cultures. Enjoy an international lunch. Have somebody bring in lunch, have a lunch at your organization where people can sample food from other nations. That would be fun to do. And who does not enjoy the peaceful rejuvenation opportunity of a nice beach? And I invite you to ask questions at the time that the questions are up for us. Thank you very much for your participation and your listening to me.
Thank you, Miss Elaine Wilson. Beautiful. And thank you, Mary. We appreciate your presentation. Now we'll focus now to Mr. Vice Mayor Dan Wu.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eleanor and LaDonna and Kentucky League of Cities for hosting us. I'm very excited about this. And I think it's maybe unintentionally interesting, and you'll soon see sort of a contrast between these two presentations. Unlike Ms. Elaine Wilson, my sort of life of intentional inclusivity has been sort of accidental, as is I think most of my career path. So how do we reconcile sort of an accidental life with intentionality? So that's what we're gonna talk about. Let's see here. Everybody see my screen there? So this picture is from just 2 months ago when I was first sworn in as a brand new vice mayor in the city of Lexington. But we're going to back up a little bit and kind of talk about how I got here. That's me and my mom in our first year in not Kentucky, in the United States. We first ended up in Fargo, North Dakota. I came here at the age of 8. When I was 12, we moved to Lexington, where I went to junior high school in Henry Clay, and then UK as an art major there on the right. And by the time I graduated Lexington, Lexington felt a little bit too small. So I moved to San Francisco. In California, I was a jack of all trades, working retail, worked for a couple of internet companies, did some writing and editing, and even worked on the 2000 census. And then 4 years later, got restless again and moved to New York City, where I opened a brick and mortar video store. Anyone remember video stores back pre-Netflix? A few years later, I had a baby, and living in New York City just got to be a little bit too much. And so I moved back to Lexington. Now, it wasn't quite as exciting as this picture would lead you to believe. It would be some years later before the biggest pivot of my life happened, and that would be 2014, when I made my way onto a little cooking competition on Fox called MasterChef. And yes, I was indeed unemployed at the time. I earned my apron onto that show with what else? Ramen. And 8 episodes later, I met my match, and that was red velvet cake. I am a cook and not a baker, and so this took me out, and that was that. But I was able to parlay this brief notoriety into a professional cooking career, doing pop-ups, private dining, special events, and even restaurant takeovers. And in 2017, that culminated in my opening my own restaurant, Atomic Ramen, out at the Summit. So at that time, food was definitely my life, but it wasn't really the only thing I cared about. In 2017, our brand new, then new president had essentially declared war on anybody who didn't look like him, targeting especially immigrants and refugees, talking about building a border wall and banning all Muslims from the country. The resistance to this was just as strong, and it spurred a lot of us into action, myself included. The summer before I opened Atomic Ramen, with the help of Kentucky for Kentucky, I launched a Hearts and Minds campaign called I Am a Kentuckian. We created t-shirts and created a video featuring some of my favorite Kentuckians.
My name is Sav. I'm from Guinea, West Africa. I'm Kentuckian.
My name is Nada. I am from Palestine. I am a Kentuckian.
My name is Bill.
My name is May.
My name is Cremena. I'm from Bulgaria.
I am from Vietnam.
I am a Kentuckian.
My name is Anna.
I'm from Iraq.
I'm a Kentuckian. 제 이름은 루시입니다.
Soy de México.
Anna, Kentuckian. My name is Hoda.
I am from Bhutan.
I'm from South Africa.
I'm from Korea.
Nací en Ecuador.
I am a Kentuckian.
My name is Lori.
My name is Oka.
Me llamo Fausto.
My name is Craig. I am Esteban. I'm from Philippines.
Soy de Puerto Rico.
I am from Chicago, Illinois.
I am from Lexington.
Soy de Kentucky. I am a Kentuckian.
I'm a Kentuckian.
I am a Kentuckian.
I am a Kentuckian.
I am a Kentuckian.
I'm Kentuckian.
I am a Kentuckian.
I am a Kentuckian. I'm a Kentuckian.
I'm a Kentuckian.
I am a Kentuckian.
Soy Kentuckiano.
I am a Kentuckian.
I am a Kentuckian.
As you can probably imagine, you can't create a project like this without being inclusive. So in a way, I wasn't even at the time trying to be intentional about inclusion. Is just what the project called for.
My name is.
We also, along with this video project, we created and hosted a terrific event featuring lots of speakers and poets and performers, showcasing our beautiful multicultural city. All the proceeds from this event and the shirts went to benefiting Kentucky Refugee Ministries. They settle new refugees into Lexington, and Kentucky Equal Justice Center, which provides low and free cost legal services for immigrants and other people in need. As I continue to run my restaurant, I've found lots of different opportunities to stay connected and continue to support my community, like this Give Back Day that we rotated 12 different nonprofits, and we did this for the entire time that we were open. In 2019, the onslaught against our marginalized communities had not ceased. And again, I channeled my sadness and outrage into action. Along with Kentucky Equal Justice Center and a micro grant from On the Table, I created the Immigrants and Refugees Belong Here campaign. We created a slogan, and I'll pause for a second to talk about the slogan. Originally, it was immigrants and refugees welcome here. And language is very, very important. And the word welcome means this is my home, but you can come in because I allowed you to. The word belong means you belong here. This place is yours as much as it is mine. And I thought that wording was very, very important. And that was very intentional. The design is by local artist Cricket Press. We used that grant money, printed up several hundred posters, and then we went door to door and asked local businesses if they would put it in their windows. And I would say 99% of people said yes. From the germ of this idea to posters in windows was 3 months, and I'm very proud of that. In April 2021, we continued this campaign with a run of t-shirts and donated over $1,200 in proceeds to KRM and KEJC. Here we see our beautiful models, my daughter Sophia and my wife Lauren. And in late 2021, we launched the most ambitious phase yet, a crowdfunded campaign to get our message onto several iconic Lexington buildings. There you see me holding up posters of where the banners were going to be. We got the agreement from a bunch of great institutions in Lexington, and we raised the money that we needed. So now this message adorns the side of a huge parking structure on Broadway, in the window of the Pam Miller Downtown Arts Center, and on the facades of the Living Arts and Science Center and the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning. Meanwhile, my business, Atomic Ramen, was flourishing. I had 2 new locations on UK's campus, and we were even in the football stadium during football season. In 2019, I even got married. My wife, Lauren, is a teacher of kids with moderate to severe disabilities at Lafayette High School, but she is also the school sponsor of their GSA and is on the board of GLISTEN, which is a organization that tries to create safe and affirming space for people. Well, it's a lot of what Mary Taylor Huntsman talked about. I was familiar with, and I'm so glad to hear a lot of this program that happens in the more rural parts of Kentucky. 2019 was a great year, and I was so looking forward to what 2020 was going to bring. Well, we know how that turned out. Sadly, my restaurant, along with hundreds of thousands of other small businesses around the country, shuttered for good. So with so much uncertainty and a little bit too much time on my hands, I started a Facebook Live / podcast called Let's Get Through This, where I got to chat with some of my favorite people, business owners, artists, community and civic leaders, and even our Kentucky Poet Laureate. Again, I made a very conscious effort to be inclusive with my guest list. 6 weeks into my twice weekly and 4-month-long show, George Floyd was murdered and the nationwide racial reckoning began anew. I rearranged my guest calendar and focused heavily on making sure Black voices were heard. Exacerbating the health and economic devastation of COVID came an increase in anti-Asian hate and violence, culminating in the March 2021 Atlanta area shooting that took the lives of 6 Asian American women and 2 others. This time, I poured my anguish onto the page with an op-ed. And we organized a rally, a day of remembrance and solidarity. And in organizing this event, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just about Asian folks speaking up for Asian folks. One of white supremacy's greatest weapons is its ability to divide and conquer. And I wanted to fight this by strengthening all the bonds between all the marginalized communities. So once again, we were very intentional about being inclusive of people from different nationalities, racial and ethnic backgrounds, gender, sexuality, and religion. And it really was a sight to behold. It was a beautiful face of Lexington is what I want my city to look like. And these events really started to coalesce my activism into a real desire to see change. From this tragedy came another project that helped me and hopefully others channel this grief and anger into catharsis. Along with the ACLU's Charlene Buckles, Berea entrepreneur and activist May Cermak, and Kentucky State Representative Nima Kulkarni, the only Asian American in the Kentucky General Assembly, and with the help of Louisville Public Media, we created Where Y'all Really From, a podcast about Asian Americans in Kentucky.
What's the one universal question Asian American Pacific Islanders are asked at least once, but probably more like 1 million times?
Where are you from? Where are you from? I'm from Louisville. No, where are you from? Louisville, Kentucky. I'm from Williamsburg, Kentucky. Kentucky. I grew up in Northern Kentucky. Louisville is definitely home. Bowling Green, Kentucky. And then it's like, no, but where are you really from?
There's a million answers that run through your head every time it's asked.
And I don't really know how to answer that question.
I'll just kind of pause, wait an awkward few seconds, and say, why do you ask?
Well, I was born in Chicago, but I have a feeling that that's not what you mean.
I'm adopted, right? So my family is from Louisville, not lying at all. This is where I grew up, where I graduated high school from.
Sometimes I just don't have the patience to explain where I'm from.
Right, exactly.
On our podcast, Where Are Y'all Really From?, we chat and share the diverse stories and perspectives of Asian and Pacific Islanders living, learning, and loving in Kentucky.
And every single one of us has a story. I said, hi, what can I get y'all? And they just busted out laughing. They thought that was the funniest thing. Said, I did not expect that accent to come out of that face.
Living in Whitesburg, Kentucky, they saw, this brown girl. It's like, we know she's not from here. How can we place her?
Louisville and Kentucky is still very much a black and white place. Even though your parents were white, you weren't white, but you're not black.
You're completely torn in a moment like that, where you want to put the camera down, but you understand that this is an important story.
The students would call all the men faculty, doctor, and the women professors would be called Mrs.
We feel like a sense of belonging. Now we have like a country, a place to call home.
I'm Charlene Buckles, Louisville-based activist, fundraiser, and a proud Filipina Kentuckian.
And I'm Dan Wu, Chinese-American business owner and activist in Lexington. Join us for Where Are Y'all Really From the Louisville Public Media Podcast Incubator.
Learn more at where'yallreallyfrom.org.
So shameless plug, season 1 of this podcast is available everywhere you can find podcasts, and season 2 is in the works as we speak.
What's the one universal?
And once again, we practiced intentionality about what voices we wanted to lift up, even within the Asian American AAPI community in Kentucky. Our season 1 guests included a victims advocate, a filmmaker, then president of U of L, and a young pair of Olympic fencing champions, among others. I love Lexington. Lexington is my home, and I wanted to keep making my city better. So I decided to run for office. I ran for Lexington City Council at large. And for me, this wasn't just about being the first Asian American to run for local office. I wanted to represent not just those who look like me, but all underrepresented communities in Lexington. Once again, we very thoughtfully and intentionally built a campaign team and an army of volunteers that reflected those communities, people of different faiths, sexual and gender identities, races, and economic backgrounds. This intentionality enabled us to be effective, creative, inclusive, and let people know that we were serious about representation, inclusivity, and diversity. We ran an unprecedented, truly grassroots campaign, mobilizing hundreds of volunteers and reaching tens of thousands of voters across Lexington. And guess what? We won. In case you didn't know, in Lexington City Council at-large race, 6 candidates run for 3 at-large seats, and the top vote getter is also named vice mayor. That's me. I am very proud to be Lexington's first Asian American council member and vice mayor. And it also wasn't just me elected in this last election. We ushered in an unprecedented 6 people of color onto our 15-member council, not to mention a record 9 women, and not to mention members of our LGBTQ+ community. It was very clear to us that the voters of Lexington were ready for a change. So what's next? We're just 8 weeks into our term, but the new council and I are already working hard tackling issues like affordable housing, tenant protections, and diversifying boards and commissions, among many other issues, always with an eye on inclusion and equity, not just as buzzwords, but really core to the way we conduct business in city government and beyond, with intentionality, with creativity, and with courage. Thank you all very much.
Wow. Thank you both. All 3 of you. That was phenomenal. That presentation was wonderful. And that is exactly what we here at the League want to share with all of Kentucky. How successful we can be if we all are able to come to the table and be a part, and all these voices being heard. What you're doing across the state here in Lexington, thank you, folks. That was absolutely wonderful. Are there any questions at this time? I know I've just got a whole lot just rolling around, but I want to open it up. If anyone has any questions, are there any questions in the chat? You can either unmute yourself and speak, or you can type your questions in the chat and we will read them. But a presentation like that, I mean, you've covered every aspect of diversity and inclusion and belonging. Again, phenomenal presentation. Thank you so much, both of you. LaDonna, do we have any questions? Is there anyone that, again, would like to unmute and speak at this time?
I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but yes, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question or type it in that chat box at the bottom.
So if there are none, I've had some thoughts on this, and being in this arena of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the first time. I've always shared I've been a Black woman for 52 years, but as you both had mentioned, it's more than just that. It's more than just race. It's more than just gender. There's so many more things to think about and look at when we go into this arena. So one of my questions would be, can you share some of the challenges that you face? Because, that all sounds great and how beautiful it's come together. However, the struggle is real. And anyone who's worked in this arena of diversity, equity, and inclusion knows that because you don't seek to alienate anyone. However, just the words that you may use can sometimes be a buzzword to alienate folks. So how have you dealt, and Vice Mayor Wu or Miss Elaine Wilson, please, either one of you, or I'm sorry, Miss Elaine, your co-workers.
Mary.
Mary
Taylor.
Yeah, Mary Taylor. Either of the three of you, please address that question of the challenges that you face and then the victories.
I would say for me personally, it's very hard to not know what you don't know. And so for me personally, coming from an immigrant background, coming from an Asian American background, those are often my core focuses when I think about diversity and inclusion. I think about people from other countries. I think about refugees. I think about language access and access to services for folks who are not originally from here, new Americans. And where I have to really intentionally work is to make sure that I think about all these other areas of diversity in terms of disability, in terms of sexuality, gender, all these other issues, religion. And so I am always happy to surround myself with people with these other experiences who can continually sort of remind and nudge me into those areas. My wife works with kids with disabilities, and she is a huge advocate in the LGBTQ community. So those are two areas that I'm getting better about sort of including into my own unconscious core of things that I always think about. But I think it always helps to have people around you to keep nudging you to do better.
Love it. Absolutely. Miss Elaine, same question.
This is a question that we were asked in a meeting that I was in yesterday, but it's about how did you grow up and what did you do about the issue of being different or whatever. And I grew up in Lexington, and it was kind of interesting because where I grew up is a one-block street, and most of the people on our street were African Americans, and the street right next to ours was all Caucasians, but we all managed to get along with everybody. Everybody was poor, nobody had anything. So my mother had told me that we were no different from anybody else. Nobody is different. My grandmother drilled into me that I was second to none, and I believe that. I still do. And that's probably why I continue to do as many things as I can But I have had occasions, I tell you, I've lived in Somerset for many, many years. And I guess the first place I ran into something that I thought was less than stellar was when I was a Kentucky babe at UK. And one of the people on the team asked me one time what I was doing there. You know, like people of color weren't supposed to be in UK. And I'm sure that she had no idea that Lyman T. Johnson had made it so that not only was I welcome there, but everybody else. There are, I don't know how many different kinds of people at UK. There were like 400, 500, I don't know. There's all kinds of people from everywhere and everybody is welcome there. Here in Somerset, when my husband and I joined a country club here many years ago, I would take my children to the pool. And so little white children would come up to me and say, well, what are you doing here? You know, like I didn't belong there. And that was just the sort of thing that I got, you know, in different places. Several years ago, it has been about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess now, I was just coming out of one of the grocery stores and this, of course, red truck, no offense to other people who like red trucks, and a rebel flag hanging off the back of it. They saw me coming out of the grocery store and they called me the N word, which I really did not appreciate. But I don't respond to people who do things like that. And I know that they're ignorant and they were probably raised like that. However, it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. And I kept thinking to myself, what am I doing here, actually? But I have been here for many years and most of the people have been really, really good to me. And I have no complaints because I carry myself as somebody who is a professional, and wherever I go, I'd like to feel like I do belong there. I belong to a mostly white church, but everybody's, you know, welcome there, and they have been for many, many years. It's just a matter of being able to accept people no matter what they say, no matter what they do to you. I've learned to deal with that for most of my life, and it really doesn't bother me. I have a few friends, and that's all I need. You know, I've been blessed to be where I am now. There will be some people, like somebody I mentioned earlier, if you're Black, you're not supposed to have an advanced degree. Well, I will have one in May of this year. It's taken me many years to be able to get to that point, but I expect to have my doctorate. And that's one of the things I've been able to strive for decades. And it's finally going to happen. And whatever it is, my mother always said, they can't take your education away from you. So that's the way I believe.
And that is wonderful. Everything that you've just shared has been so insightful. So at this point, the things that I want to leave with you all is that there is no easy fix. These conversations are very important. Having diverse people around you is very important. As Vice Mayor Wu said, we only look through the lens that we've been given. But when you incorporate other friends and family members in your circle, you'll start to see things in a lot broader perspective. It is complex. And the last thing I'd like to say is we're all stewards, each and every one of us. Thank you today for being on this call. We're being intentional right now, starting today. And even if you haven't thought of that before, the intentionalness of inclusion is very important. We thank you for attending this first series. We're right on time to get you out of here. A lot of you have signed up for the 4-part series. thank you. Even if you have not, please continue to share the word. And also, we are here at KLC. If there's anything that we can help you do, again, there's no experts here. We're all stewards, but us working all together is going to make a change. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to, again, Vice Mayor Dan Wu, Miss Elaine Wilson, and Miss Mary Hunt. We appreciate you. Have a great day.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.